Welcome to the My Breakthrough Zone podcast show with your favorite host, Coach Sybil Kears. We go live every Monday on the Boss Lady 101 Facebook page and our YouTube channel. Make sure you come through to get your breakthrough. Hey everybody, this is Coach Sybil Kears and welcome to the My Breakthrough Zone podcast show. I am thankful to spend this time with you, and we are going to pick up where we left off. So we have been talking in this series about overcoming obstacles and just basically how to make obstacles an opportunity for success, right? And so we talked about several things, and this week we're going to talk about basically how to even identify what's an obstacle. And you may say, well, you probably think you know how to, but you'd be surprised how to understand what an obstacle is versus some things that we make a mountain out of a molehill from, okay? So let's talk about it. We want to basically understand what our obstacle is for one reason, because it will help us devise a plan on how to overcome it. Because ultimately, that's the goal. We want to overcome these obstacles because we still have a goal that we're trying to get to, right? So now that we have an understanding of how that we want to overcome the obstacle, we need to start digging into how to make those obstacles opportunities for success. So we could start off by just saying basically obstacle is a challenge and it may come our way. We've already talked about how even if it doesn't seem like other people are going through, they are, because we all are. At some point in our lives, we all face some challenges and obstacles, okay? But we have to try to figure out how to correctly identify the obstacles. Because listen, some people, especially if they have a negative mindset, they're going to find a problem for every solution you come up with, right? It should be the reverse, but when you have the negative disposition, everything is a problem, right? And so in reality, we should not live in a time or in a space where everything is a problem. There is going to be some challenges, but certainly we can attest that it's not going to be everything, right? So we got to learn how to identify what's really the obstacle that we're needing to spend our energy to overcome. So identifying obstacles will definitely make you more aware of the positives in the situation. It will also bring light to the negatives and help you identify your biases. And these are the things you have to identify in order to effectively overcome them. If you don't identify your obstacle, then it's impossible to come up with an action plan or action steps to overcome them. So yes, like I said, we may identify many things as obstacles, and if you're pessimistic, you may think of a lot of things that may be considered obstacles, but let's take the opportunity to learn how to properly classify what these obstacles are. We're going to try to categorize them and then devise a plan that will help us successfully overcome them, okay? So I'm going to talk about some common obstacle types. These will be general categories that you may be able to place whatever it is you're facing in one of these categories, okay? Now, the first thing that people face as an obstacle is facing the unknown. Okay, this is the most general obstacle type, but facing the unknown is an obstacle for people because whenever they find themselves in that situation that's unfamiliar, they tend to feel stuck, okay? Whether it's getting a new job or talking to new people, you're facing the unknown, and that's something some people have a difficult time trying to navigate their way through in that space. So even though this is the general category, this obstacle can be incredibly difficult for those that have anxiety, social anxiety, the introverts like myself, you know, the introverted personalities. We don't like talking to people. We don't like being in crowded spaces. We have our things. And so going into unfamiliar territory for us can be nerve-wracking, okay? People that have low self-esteem issues find it difficult to overcome this obstacle. People who are unsure of themselves often don't want to assert themselves, right? They want to hide, they want to shrink. So in general, facing the unknown could be an obstacle in itself for many people because it takes a lot of courage and confidence to overcome this category of an obstacle. To make the unfamiliar familiar is not an easy task. So the best way to try to overcome this type of obstacle is just to basically remind yourself that everyone has been in that situation a time or two, okay? Someone has been in your shoes before and they survived. Most people are not going to judge you. The biggest prison most people live in is in their minds. And it's encased with the fear of what others will think about them. And literally, that's almost like the definition of social anxiety. I think I mentioned that in another episode, but it's true, okay? So many people operate based off what they think other people think about them or don't operate, okay? So there's things that if you find yourself facing the fear of the unknown more often than not, to the point that you feel stuck or you feel like you can't move forward, or it just takes a whole lot to do that you rather avoid it, then you definitely have to realize, like we talked about, the positive, the negatives, and your biases. You have to understand that there is some negative energy there, that you do have to work on your self-esteem. You do have to recognize that you can walk in any room like you belong there, that nobody can actually just put your value less than what it is. You have to value yourself and let nobody's opinion diminish it at all, okay? You have to work on your self-esteem and become more trusting of yourself and your ability to operate and function even in the unfamiliar places, okay? And that's your first step, to try to wrap your mind around, okay, I think I can overcome this obstacle. Because you know what? Other people have gotten through it. I've been in this situation before and gotten through it. So let me try to take one step forward and get through it again, okay? Here's another category: pressure to be someone other than themselves. Now you may say, why is this an obstacle? Because it is. When people face this type of pressure to be someone other than themselves, this is a huge obstacle. Okay, this pressure can come from family, friends, society, church, wherever. However, people struggle with this obstacle more than you realize. We have to wear many different types of hats in different scenarios, organizations, and responsibilities that we have. And so sometimes we don't even know who we are. But here's the thing. When you're feeling pressure to the point that you can't even be yourself, this is an obstacle, because you're not walking in shoes that fit you. Okay, so no matter what space you're in, no matter what title you have, no matter what position you have, you should always be yourself in every single one of those things, everywhere you go. Okay, so to overcome this obstacle, you need to know where to draw the line between yourself and others. What are your values? What do you think of yourself? Okay, what do you want out of your life? Asking yourself these sorts of questions and then finding yourself capable of answering them will help you clarify that you are not here to be pressured to be nobody else or be who other people want you to be. Sometimes people get in relationships and, you know, in the beginning part, it's the honeymoon phase, right? We're doing everything we can to impress the other person, you know, we're doing a little extra. And then after a while, the real person surfaces, right? And sometimes it's not always that dressed up person that you met in the beginning. And so sometimes we start doing things in the relationships to get the person that we're not willing to continue to do throughout. And ultimately that might be the reason we lose that person, because we didn't do everything that we did to get them in the same fashion to keep them. So why am I bringing that up? Because sometimes people get in these relationships and they're looking for you to become who they want you to be. They want you to fit a particular person in their mind. They want you to be what they want you to be and who they want you to be. And when you don't, it causes conflict. It causes obstacles. It causes challenges. So if at this point, you may start to feel like in order for you to remain in this situation, you have to become someone you're not. Okay, another scenario where this might apply. Sometimes you have young adults who are embarking on adulthood and embarking on becoming their own individual. However, the parents may want them to go to a particular college, or they might want them to follow a certain career path, or whatever it is. And sometimes the young adult may have their own perspective or view on what their life is going to be, right? And so let's say the parent would start to withhold finances, financial support, or whatever, to put that pressure on, you're going to do what I want you to do. Well, now this child may not ever be able to develop whatever it is that they're passionate about, because they're feeling pressured to be someone other than who they really are, okay? And so when you have to face these types of obstacles, of being pressured and being someone you're not, for whatever reason, you need to actually do some inner work. You have to set some boundaries. Okay, you got to draw the line, and sometimes it's not going to be easy, and sometimes it may be even a little harsh, but you have to do it, because if you don't, you will find yourself staying in a place that you were not created to remain in, if that makes sense. Okay, so make sure that you understand that it's all about who you are, knowing who you are, and once you know, making sure everybody else is comfortable with you being who you are, okay? So let's talk about another category that is considered an obstacle: limited finances. I know someone can relate. Limited finances is just something that is incredibly difficult to be challenged with. In so many situations, limited finances can be due to reasons beyond our control: losing a job, having an extended family, different things, an unexpected turn of events. Anything can cause a ripple effect in one's finances, right? Then you find yourself having limited resources as a result of this. So unlike the last two obstacles I mentioned, this one is going to be something that's going to have to require more tangible action steps for you to overcome, okay? You're going to have to create a budget. And if you already have one, you may have to adjust it, because now you have some things that impacted your income, right? So you're going to have to really be transparent about your spending habits, and you're going to have to adjust. You're going to have to exercise some discipline, but you're going to have to do it all so that it works out to where you find yourself being able to overcome this type of an obstacle, okay? Even if it's going to get another job or figuring out another way to acquire some additional income. But nonetheless, this is something that is going to take some work from you, okay? So even with the obstacle of having limited finances, there's other things that play a role, right? Because now what if you are not able to get the extra money that you need in a certain time? Then there's a snowball effect, because if we don't pay our bills, then our credit goes bad. And what happens when that happens? Now we start having other issues, and it's so much more difficult to dig ourselves out of a hole that's too deep, right? But as we know, when it comes to limited finances, it can happen quickly. So as soon as you feel this type of obstacle developing, it's best that you wrap your mind around taking these action steps to do your best to ward it off before it gets too deep. You want to make sure you understand that you're going to have to do some serious adjustments in your day-to-day living, your spending habits, even your eating habits. But be willing to do it, because that's what it's going to take for you to overcome this type of an obstacle, okay? Well, let's see, I'm going to talk about one more obstacle that most people can relate to: relationship issues. Okay, this is something that I think is very frequently considered to be an obstacle for a lot of people, because as human beings, like I talked about earlier, there are so many things that happens in a relationship, right? And at times, sometimes our individuality tends to become compromised, because we are no longer our own person when we fully are committed to somebody. But yet we still have this innate desire to have our own expressions, our own thoughts, our own ways. We want to be able to make our own decisions, so on and so forth. So we feel that other people should just basically fall in line with how we think. But that's not always the case, right? And sometimes when that disagreement occurs, there's tension. There's a lot of things that happen that makes it unpleasant, right? So now it becomes more difficult to overcome this obstacle because now it's not just something involving just you. There's other people involved causing this obstacle to exist. So often an obstacle in a relationship is very specific to a certain event or pattern or different things, okay? To identify the obstacle, you'll need to have a conversation with the other person to determine their side of the story, which means we have to learn to listen to understand and not listen to respond. Yes, listen to understand, not listen to respond. What do I mean? Sometimes when we're having discussions, we are listening and automatically calculating a way to either have a rebuttal or an argument about what the person is saying, but we did not hear what they said. Okay? So we have to think about that. Now, have a conversation, transparent, not a screaming match, not a shouting match. Mutual respect has to be displayed. And then there has to be a willingness to work with the other person to create the necessary action steps that will in turn eliminate this obstacle within the relationship. Sometimes the obstacle may be irreconcilable. For example, if your partner doesn't want children and you do, that's kind of a hard pill to swallow, right? So that may not be something that you can just write off and talk about. This is a big decision. And if there is no common ground, then other decisions may have to be made to determine the betterment of this union or this relationship, right? So often the only strategy for overcoming that type of obstacle would be separating, but that is still an overcoming of that obstacle. So you have to be willing to understand that, number one, dealing with any relationship, co-workers, friendships, relatives, romantic relationships, professional relationships, whatever it is, you're going to have to understand that everybody has a difference of opinion. You're entitled to yours, they're entitled to theirs. There should be a mutual ground in order for that relationship to continue to work successfully. When the problem comes up that there is a disagreement or some tension, then there should be a willingness to have a conversation about it and being open to listening to understand and not so quick to respond. And then finding that common ground that, hey, now we can move on from this, okay? You can have these obstacles relating to problems with anyone, but your goal should always be to approach it with the same resolution in the same manner, okay? So when identifying these obstacles, you definitely want to try to create some action steps that are directly related to the problem at hand. These action steps give you something tangible to do to overcome the obstacle. Your action steps should not be too relaxed, lackadaisical, okay? They're going to take some effort, and it should be some willingness to apply some effort, right? So instead of trying to take it all in and trying to fix it overnight, you may have to break it down into mini goals. We've talked about that in another season within this podcast, where we talked about the proper way to set goals and accomplish them. You may have to break them down, and that's okay. Okay, you may have to break down the goals so that you can overcome the obstacle in steps. All right. So in addition to the action steps, you're going to have to do some self-reflection. In anything we do, seeking to improve any circumstances involving us should always come with the notion that there's some self-reflection that needs to go on. Okay. We can talk about everyone else all day, but there comes a point in time when you have to look in the mirror. You have to face yourself. You got to work out your own inner demons. You got to realize that everybody else in the world's crap stinks. That means so does yours. We have to be responsible enough to admit that, because when we do, that's how we start the work to grow. Okay. So being willing to do some self-reflection is important when facing an obstacle. because certain obstacles will take a large toll on you emotionally and mentally. You want to make sure that you are still not being engulfed and swallowed up by this obstacle, that you're still functioning while you're working it out, okay? And you're going to have to improve your emotional intelligence and understand that you may be in a not so great mood, but you can't take that out on everybody. You can't start criticizing everybody because you're feeling dissatisfied in that moment. Self-reflect on how are you impacting others even while you're going through, okay? And then make sure that you pay attention to what you're feeling. Pay attention to how you're processing your thoughts, okay? If you find yourself going a little bit on a negative side, you may have to do some other things to bring you back into a center of peace. You're gonna have to do it. Because just because you're going through a problem doesn't mean the world is ending, and it doesn't mean you get the right to take it out on everybody else, okay? So making sure you understand how you feel about the situation will help you overcome the obstacle a little more quickly. But do not ignore how you feel. Some people suppress, and that in the long run causes more harm than good. If you got to journal, journal. If you got to go and just have some recreational time of working out or whatever it is to de-stress, do it. But process your feelings. Understand this obstacle isn't a permanent thing, and that you are in the process of getting through it, okay? And the only thing to get through it is to go through it, all right? So even though the real obstacle may seem like it is between your ears, right, all in your head and not in the real world, understand it. Just understand that you are human. You are entitled to have goals and work towards accomplishing them. And in that process, there will be obstacles, but you are learning how to take appropriate steps to overcome those obstacles so that you understand where you are and stay focused on where you're going, okay? The first step to overcoming an obstacle is to identify the exact problem. And you do this by breaking up the obstacle into categories that will help you see the obstacle and make tangible plans to overcome them. And there you create your action steps, and then just get back in touch with who you are, remembering how blessed you really are in spite of your circumstances, in spite of what's going on. You still have something to appreciate about in yourself and in the life that you have been given to live, okay? So that's basically all I have for today. Next week, I believe we're going to wrap up this series of overcoming obstacles, and I think we're going to wrap it up by talking about how to start focusing on you and controlling our emotional state while we are applying tangible steps to overcome these obstacles and accomplish the goal successfully. It's going to wrap it all and tie it all in to focusing on you and how you can get it done, okay? So make sure you tune in next Monday, Lord willing. We'll be back and we will be able to wrap up this series about obstacles. I hope it has been helpful. I hope it has helped you in more ways than one. Certainly, I have gotten something every time I research my information and prepare myself for this podcast show. But nonetheless, I am your favorite host, Coach Sybil Kears. This is the My Breakthrough Zone podcast show. We are tuning in live on Facebook land, and we also are available on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor FM. We are trying to make sure that we are putting this content out there. So if you, and YouTube, if you are anywhere in those areas, go ahead and subscribe or give us a thumbs up, a like, whatever it is that you need to do based on the platform. Let us know you've been visiting, and we will be glad to see you, okay? We thank you for all the love and support, and we appreciate your time. You could have been anywhere else, but you are here, and we hope that you got something out of this, all right? That's all I got for today. Much love and success. God bless.